In order for me to properly begin my story, I gotta start you off with a little bit of background context. Let me take you back to around 1997. I'm male, by the way, and I just turned 18 years old. I was fresh out of high school, and I was looking for work. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in college, so instead, I wanted to make some extra money. Luckily, my mom was friends with a manager of our local Blockbuster. Yeah, you guys remember those days, right? Back when you would actually go out and rent the movies? Well, okay, I digress. The point I'm trying to make was I now had a job for the summertime. The first couple weeks were fairly routine. I learned how to work the cash register, and I learned about keeping the stores filled with movies. One afternoon, it was just myself at the cash register when a woman, I want to say she was, I think she was in her 40s or so, she comes into the store. She was about 5'3" with long brunette hair, clothing that was a mess, and even some scars on her cheek. She seemed pretty normal at first, so I gave her a friendly hello, and she nervously waved back. Hey there, welcome. Anything I could do to help you out and find something in particular? She looks at me as if I was speaking another language. And then she finally says, I'm just here to look around. Don't mind me. I made sure to tell her if there's anything she needed, I could help her out. I now returned to reading the magazine I was going over, which was Nintendo Power, in case you're interested. I only remember that detail because I had a subscription for Nintendo Power. 10 minutes go by, and I haven't seen any signs of the lady. I give it another 10 minutes, and now I'm starting to get a bit suspicious. Something I noticed was I kept hearing what sounded like some sort of camera clicking sound, something like a disposable camera. Since I had to close the store soon, I take a look at the security camera, and I could see her looking through one of the aisles. Kinda weird. Where she was, she had been looking between the shelf and had been staring directly at me. Hey miss, I'm about to close the store. You gotta go. Well, okay, maybe I didn't say it that unprofessionally, but deep down inside, that's what I wanted to say. You get the point. Oh, why so soon? I was enjoying looking at you. Wait, what did she say? I meant the movies, not you. Sorry, I got confused for a second. That's when I noticed those cheap cameras that you could buy at the grocery store, aka the disposable camera. Miss, why do you have a camera with you? Oh, I always have it with me, so that way I could take pictures. Don't worry about it. I eventually get her to leave, and I close the store. The next evening, I was working, and I mentioned the creepy lady to my boss. Oh, yeah, she's come into the store before. I guess I forgot to tell you about it. And next time you see her, feel free to call the police. She had been stalking a previous employee here, and she had to leave because she tried breaking into her home of all things. If that wasn't creepy enough. Just wait until I get to this next part. You see, that same evening, I was actually working alone again, which figures as much, and again, I'm closing. Now, before leaving, I decided to head into the back alleyway, so that way I could throw away some of the trash that we had. I started hearing footsteps approaching down the alleyway, and I happened to look over. It's the strange lady from the other night. Hey, good evening. Nice night out here, am I right? Yeah, it is. Would it be okay if I went into the store to spend some time with you? Sorry, miss, but I really need to close the store. I gotta get home. What she says next, still to this day, it shocks me. Why do you have to play so hard to get? Don't you want to get to know me better? She then takes out a knife, which obviously sends chills down my spine. I'll show you why it's not a good idea to ignore me. But that's what she said, her words, not mine. I book it into the store where, obviously I hit the alarm. Luckily, this back door locks itself once it's closed, and there was no way she was going to get in. Police officers showed up less than 10 minutes later, but she was already gone. I made sure to give them a description, and she never did show up to the store again. But she did manage to find my home of all things. Yeah, I'm not joking. One night, my parents and I had gone over to our neighbor's house for dinner. I happened to look out the window, and well, I could see somebody going through our mailbox on our front porch. They were hard to see at first, but when our front porch lights turned on, you could actually see a woman trying to open our living room window. We called the police, and they showed up about 5 minutes later. They find the lady hiding in my dad's shed, and she's got a hold of one of my dad's hatchets. Yeah, it was the same lady from Blockbuster, and she had found out where I lived. Thankfully, that was the last I ever heard from her. So, anyway, that's my story with the creepy Blockbuster stalker. Oh, yeah, and before I forget to mention this next part, there was actually a reason why she was going through my mailbox. There were pictures of me that were taken inside the Blockbuster. I was right. She had been taking photos of me. Alongside it were various love notes about how she would do anything to be with me. With that, she also said that she would make sure that nobody interfered with her plans. It's safe to say that those plans weren't exactly innocent. I've since moved on, but I figured I'd share this story with the Creepy Fox as an exclusive story for you all. Thanks for listening. Hey, I heard Creepy Fox was going to be covering some video rental store stories and Blockbuster stories. I actually have one that I think would be perfect for you all. Now, I'm not exactly the best writer in the world, so please bear with me as I write all of this out to you. For quick reference, this is from the perspective of a female. This also takes place in Southern California in the late 1990s. I was 18 years old. Anyway, it was this summer before my senior year of high school, and I picked up a job working for Blockbuster. Crazy to think that they don't exist anymore. Anyway, learning the ropes, well, so to speak, was actually fairly easy. Training was only a couple of days, and it covered the usual things you'd expect. Customer service, how to restock the store and the shelves, how to use the computer system databases to look up movies and rent them out, etc. By the beginning of the second week, I was left to work all by myself. It was a bit intimidating, I'll be honest with all of you. But luckily, I handled it like a champ, and so did the customers who noticed I was brand new. One evening, I want to say a month or so into the new job, I was called by the manager of the Blockbuster, who we're going to refer to as Bob. Yeah, I know it's just a typical name, but I'll use it for the story. Anyway, Mr. Bob the Builder asks if I could cover for my coworker, who I'll refer to as Abigail. Apparently, she was unable to make it to her shift because she had gotten sick. I myself was looking to earn enough money to put a down payment on a car, so I gladly accepted the offer. What could go wrong? Even if that meant I would be working from 3 p.m. to closing at 11 p.m., it was fine. I grabbed my uniform out of the dryer, hopped onto my bicycle, and I took the mile ride down my friendly neighborhood, and I arrived to the Blockbuster store to see my coworker Jason, who worked the morning shift. He was excited to be clocking out. Well, I couldn't blame him. He didn't really like the job, but whatever, I digress. Apparently, Jason had it pretty rough, and he got chewed out by some customers who were unhappy that we were out of the newest movie. It happened quite a bit, but what could you do? Anyway, he soon leaves the store, and I get to work. Nothing really interesting to report in the first few hours, apart from some customers getting out of work early and showing up to do some video rentals. As I remember this specific night being a Friday, I knew the evening rush was going to arrive soon. It was just a matter of time. Well, it sure got there, and finally things settled by 9 p.m. When I'm restocking some of the candy shelves, and I looked back to turn to the front door, I wasn't able to see if anybody was standing outside the store. Well, I become aware of someone's presence when I hear the bell of the front doors chime. I was tired and wanting to get to bed so badly, but I put on a friendly smile anyway and turned around to greet the customer. Standing at the front door was a man. He was best I can describe as 6'3", 200-ish pounds, wearing torn-up jeans, an oversized jacket, and had dreadlocks. I'd say he was in his mid-30s or so. "Hey, welcome. Let me know if there's anything I can assist you with." I remember he didn't respond to me. He sort of just started to walk around the store. Now, admittedly, I was actually a bit paranoid. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, bear in mind. But as he passed me, I could smell alcohol, and it was bad. As a precaution, I called my boss and told him that there was a man who I found suspicious walking around the Blockbuster. I thought my boss was going to say something along the lines of, "Oh, just deal with it and quit being a baby." But he actually told me he would be over in about 10 to 15 minutes. Cool, just needed to wait things out. Maybe another customer would show up. But of course, wouldn't you know it, no one ever did. And it was just me and this guy, with the only thing keeping us company being the rain hitting the windows. Anyway, I do try to calm myself down by looking at some of the TVs I had next to me. "Hey, excuse me, miss. Would you happen to have a lighter on you?" The strong smell of alcohol returns, and I look up from looking at the TVs to see the man who had entered the store standing just mere inches from my face. No, sorry, I don't. Besides, you aren't allowed to smoke in here." He lets out a visible sigh of frustration and then begins to ramble about all these crazy things. I was pretty sure it was the alcohol speaking for him on his behalf, but I would learn a bit later from the police that he was actually telling the truth. He tells me he's been in and out of jail and bragged about being involved in an armed police chase on the freeway. I was just standing there nervously laughing, and I remember him saying something along the lines of, "That's not supposed to be funny. Cut it out before I force you to be quiet." The way he went from speaking so nonchalantly to telling me to shut up, it was very intense, but that was the least of my worries. As I apologize, he puts his hands into his pocket. I freaked out when moments later, he takes out a knife, and then he says, "I know how you can make it up to me. Let's go into the back room. I'm sure you can use your imagination." Here I was stuck, in between a window and the front counter. How the heck was I going to get out of here without him catching me and stabbing me? So many things could have gone wrong for me. He could have reached over the countertop for me, he could jump over, or I guess I could try to run away, only for him to catch me though. I thought of the only thing that might have worked. And yeah, you don't have to tell me otherwise. It was really stupid, and I really do not recommend doing this. I pretended to give in to his request, and I hope that I can make it my getaway. So, as calmly as I could, I tell him to give me a moment, but to back up so I can open the little hatch at the countertop. Here was my chance. As the hatch was on the other side of where he was standing, it gave me just enough time, I'd say about 5 seconds or so, to book it toward the front door. Well, once the hatch door locks straight up into place, I book it like a bat out of hell, not even caring about the rain ruining my hair. By some sort of miracle, I guess the gods upstairs heard me. My boss is just pulling up into the parking spot in front of the store. I don't even think he questions further, because he opens the passenger side door and tells me to get in. The man with a knife was just inches away from grabbing hold of my hand, which is actually super creepy as I look back on this. Both myself and my boss are sitting there in his car in absolute terror as the man starts banging on the door and stabbing it. Well, okay, maybe stabbing isn't exactly the right word here, but he was using brute force from the back of the knife to hit the car. As this was a time before cell phones, there wasn't really a way to call for help. That's why we drove to a nearby gas station and we explained what had happened to the clerk. We called the police when they showed up to our Blockbuster just as we were returning to check if the man was still around, but he wasn't. However, if there was one positive about this whole thing, it was actually caught on the security camera. But anyway, I'll just wrap it up by saying that they caught him just a day later, so I guess justice was finally served as he would be arrested after that. That was the last time I ever worked in the evening time, and after all the legal stuff, I would never see that man ever again. Hey, Creepy Fox. I'm a long-time listener here, and I want to share a story about my time working at Blockbuster. Yeah, the one and only. The one that has pretty much since disappeared from retail service. I just hope it hasn't left the hearts and memories of the millions of people who it once served. I was part of that service, working as a sales associate. It was my mission to get you, the customer, the latest and greatest movies at an affordable price. Man, I sound like I'm still working there. Sorry, I just get very nostalgic with anything doing with the 90's. But you know one thing I don't miss about that job? This one coworker that we'll be discussing today. I myself had already been working at that specific Blockbuster for about 6 months, being promoted to assistant manager with ease. I was surprised when my boss came up to me one day and asked if I could train one of the new hires that would be showing up the next morning. He told me there'd be a bonus, and so naturally I gladly accepted it, looking forward to having some extra money for video games, and also some junk food. The next day arrives, and I'm surprised to see it's a man in his early 40s. He was surprisingly pretty knowledgeable with how our Blockbuster store handled all these daily operations. Apparently, he had just moved within the last 90 days and used to work for a mom-and-pop video rental store near his house. At least it saved me the trouble of needing to teach him everything. But I would soon learn this dude... well, he was a bit more than what I was expecting. It all started on the first night we worked together. It was just the two of us, and we were talking about video games or something along those lines. Now, something I have yet to mention is this man, who I guess I'll refer to as Eugene, was a bit socially awkward. That's the nicest way I could put it. And I'm not trying to be an asshole or say that in some sort of mean way. It's just that anytime a girl came up to him, he would go silent and have me speak to them. Not sure what the issue was, but whatever. Anyway, as we're talking, my girlfriend showed up, and this was when I introduced her to Eugene. Because, just trying to be friendly. He once again awkwardly ends up looking the other way, but after we talk, he starts to grow comfortable. Now, I would actually learn this after my shift. But when I went to the restroom and left my girlfriend and Eugene alone, well, he apparently started asking her some pretty bizarre questions. But perhaps the one I found most alarming was a comment about how she should date him and should dump me instead. Apparently, he thought I was this typical Chad since I played football and loved lifting weights. Not even close, pal. I was just as a nerd as much as anybody else, and still am. It just so happens I like to keep in shape. I mentioned the comments to Eugene the next time I saw him, and he told me he was just joking about it, blaming it on him just being socially awkward. I let it slide, but told him he needed to knock it off since it made my girlfriend uncomfortable. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and Eugene has started to grow more distant from me. Any sort of conversation I would try to have with him, well, it was met with very minimal acknowledgement. Now, so far you might be wondering, what's so creepy and scary about Eugene? Oh, trust me, I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. One day, I was in the break room eating a sandwich, and Eugene walks in heading to his little locker he keeps an extra set of clothing in. He grabs them and leaves. However, I noticed he dropped his wallet, and it opens up. This was when I saw something absolutely horrifying. You know the part of the wallet that's plastic and lets you see clearly through it? It's mainly used to put your ID cards in it. Well, there was a picture of my girlfriend from the senior yearbook. Curiously, I take out the photo, only to see another 5 or so photographs of her taken at a distance. As you'd expect, I was furious, and I mean very furious. How the hell did he get a hold of these photographs? Not only that, but who would process them? Unless he was the one who did it. I run out of the room toward Eugene, and instead of using my normal laid-back tone, I forcefully grab his shoulder, stop him in place, and say, "Dude, what the hell? Why do you have pictures of my girlfriend? How did you get your hands on these?" He was surprised as he stumbles to get words out. I asked you a question, pal. You got about 3 seconds to tell me why you think this was a good idea before I drop you here." Now, since I didn't want to spoil it at the beginning, I should mention my height and weight. I am about 5'12", 180 pounds, but this guy was about 6'4", 300 pounds. I clearly had the disadvantage if I got into a fight with him. He was way heavier than me. And yes, that did happen. Except instead of fighting me like a man, he takes out a gravity knife. I think that's what they're called, right? From what I know, they're actually illegal. I don't know the legality of them back then, but regardless, what I'm trying to get at here is he actually manages to scrape my arm, and he leaves a pretty nasty stab/scratching wound. It stung badly, but I was able to back away as he gets into his car and leaves. At this point, I have no clue to what had just happened, and I have no answers. But what I do have is evidence that Eugene had a sick plan, plus my manager and some customers as eyewitnesses who saw the whole thing. We ended up calling the cops to report the incident. Meanwhile, my manager had patched me up with the first aid kit we had by the time police arrived. We gave them our statement, and I handed them the wallet. The police told both myself and my manager that they would go look for him and provide with a further update at a later time. After that, my girlfriend picked me up, since my car was getting work done at the time, and we head back to my house where we try to break down what had just happened. I asked my girlfriend if she had noticed anything suspicious within the last few weeks, but she had no clue to what I was talking about. That's when I mentioned the photographs. She was obviously creeped out, and rightfully so. Apparently, she had a stalker, and it just so happened to have been my coworker of all people. Anyway, fast forward about a month or so later. By that point, Eugene was fired, and we ended up getting a restraining order on his ass. I would eventually move a year later to attend university in another state. We never did see him again, and I'm not sure where he is today. I just hope that he's since learned that coming after a coworker and his girlfriend, well, it isn't exactly the best way to make friends. This story is from the early 2000s, when my Friday tradition was getting off at work at 5 p.m., picking up a movie at Blockbuster, picking up some Panda Express, which was across the street, and returning home to my wife and 2 kids with everything in hand. I really miss those days. Sure, it's more convenient now that we have things like Hulu, Netflix, but where's the fun in that? Anyway, this was one Friday evening. Things went a little bit different than the normal routine. My son had told me earlier in the day he really wanted me to rent a Sonic the Hedgehog video game that had just released. Now, unfortunately, this Blockbuster I went to had lent out all of their copies. They were able to call another Blockbuster store on the other side of town, and they told me that there were 2 copies still left. I asked if they could save me a copy, but they advised me it's first come, first serve. Unfortunate, so I tell the cashier I was currently talking to tell them I would head over there right away, and well, we leave it at that. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Spoiling him too much? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but my son is very smart. He was in honors, and that for me was enough. He even got a master's degree in engineering later in life. Pretty cool, right? Anyway, he had gotten all A's on his report card, and I thought this was a great way to reward him since I was always festering him with his studies. I made the drive over to the Blockbuster, and first thing I do is head over to the video game section that has all the new releases. I saw 1 copy of the game left. Here's when things turn from good father getting a video game for his son to good father being caught up in a very, and I mean very scary situation. Just as I put my hands on the video game, a man walks up to me and says, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I turn around in confusion as he snatches the video game out of my hand. "What's your problem?" I grabbed it first. It's for my son. He pushes me, causing me to fall into a display. I could care less who it's for. It's mine now. Now, me tired from a long day at work gets up and puts my hands on his shoulder, as if almost to say, dude, that's not how it works. The guy takes out a damn gun, which causes a couple of customers to let out a sudden gasp. I mean, could you really blame us? The dude's got a frickin' gun. Not so tough now, are we? How about you show me some damn respect? Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but some crazy guy revealing he's got a gun and then pointing his piece right at you, it's gonna get your heart going, and it might even cause you to shit your pants. It's also going to cause you to make some pretty rash and some bold decisions. But I know what you might be thinking. What sort of decisions? Well, I've left out this detail for an exact reason. The job I had at the time, I was a self-defense instructor, and so I actually had no issues disarming the man, who then drops the video game and runs out of the store like it's nobody's damn business. The cashier calls the police. Meanwhile, the customers who had just witnessed the incident stay around to give the police a statement. I found out later that the man had been arrested and was actually connected with some armed burglaries in the past. So anyway, that was the time I stopped a potential thief at a Blockbuster store. And by the way, I just ended up buying my son a copy of the game instead of just continuously renting it. It worked out in the end, I guess. Back in the 80s, I used to work for a Blockbuster that was tied in with a small arcade. There were many evenings in which I had to close up alone, which actually wasn't a problem since the owner let me stay after hours to play video games. Talk about fun. I'd say that made it all worthwhile since I was, and actually still am, quite a night owl. There was a lot of friendly customers that I'd actually become really close friends with. Most of them would come visit me, and during my breaks we would have competitions playing Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and all the other fun games on display. Now, that didn't mean we didn't get some really interesting customers, to say the least. There is one in particular that I want to go ahead and tell you all about. It's what this story is about. It sort of started by chance, actually. I was at the grocery store with my boyfriend at the time, and this man walked up to me and told my boyfriend that he was pretty lucky to have somebody like me. He introduced himself as Josh, or something along those lines, and he was, from my best recollection, in his 50s, and I remember him being slightly overweight, a bit shorter than me. I was 5'7", and he was maybe about 5'5". He had glasses and greasy long black hair. Anyway, a couple of days later, I'm working the night shift at the Blockbuster, and the guy from the grocery store walked in. He at first had this face of, cool, just gonna rent a movie, to, oh my gosh, if it isn't the girl from the grocery store. Literally, it's like all his attention was laser focused on me as he makes his way over to the counter. He tells me it was really nice to meet me the other day and goes on about how he's never seen me here before. I told him I just started working a few months ago, but was only here on the weekend since it conflicted with my college schedule. We talk for another 15 to 20 seconds as I respond with short answers, until I told him I needed to get back to it. Here's when the first indication of something being wrong occurs. I get interrupted by a customer who's with his 2 kids that are looking to rent some movies. I remember this Josh guy telling me that the customer looking to rent the movie could wait, as he was being rude and interrupting the conversation we were having. I ignored Josh as I help out the customer, and once I'm done, he tells me it was really rude to just ignore him, but I have to remind him I'm on the clock and I have to attend to the customers. He leaves, and the rest of my shift goes by uneventfully. The next day, I'm working in the morning, and guess who shows up? Yep, it's Josh, and he's got a bouquet of roses? I'm really sorry about yesterday. You're just really cute and beautiful, and I couldn't help myself. Here, I brought you some roses to make it up to you. It was pretty awkward. And one look at my coworker Colton pretty much said it all. Even Colton told the man that this wasn't the time and place, and Josh pretty much just cursed him out. Josh insisted I take the flowers, but I told him I wasn't really feeling comfortable, and I reminded him that I had a boyfriend. Josh grows furious as he proceeds to throw the roses at my coworker Colton's face. He then knocks over some of the popcorn and candy displays before finally storming out of the Blockbuster. Colton looked at me and jokingly said that I had a new secret admirer, but then admitted it was pretty weird and creepy to have some guy 20 years my senior bringing me flowers and hitting on me. Well, yeah, I was the one having to deal with it, not him. Anyway, I do wish I could say that that was the last time I would see Josh, but it's not over yet. Not by a long shot. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, Josh would come into the store, but instead of talking to me, he would just walk around for hours at a time. It looked like he was pretending to be looking at renting movies. He didn't even play at any of the arcade machines. He would just sit at one of the benches, and I swear he was just staring at me. I finally brought it up with my manager, and I told him I wasn't really feeling comfortable working under the current circumstances. He told me he would take care of it. And one day, he walked up to Josh and told him that he can't be just loitering around since other customers might want to use the benches and sit down. Josh then disappeared for about roughly 3 months, and I finally thought the talk my manager had with him would be enough. That was until one evening I was closing with Colton at the Blockbuster. We'd already escorted all the customers out of the store, and Colton had been in the back room using the restroom. I was in the process of locking the doors. Before I could make it to the front door, however, I saw someone staring at me from one of the dark windows outside. I could not believe it, but standing out in the rain was Josh. I freaked out as I attempted locking the front door, but he manages to place his hands on the door handles literally 2 seconds before I could put the key into the keyhole. I booked it toward the back room just as Colton is walking out. "Colton, get inside and call the police, quick!" I shout, full of panic and fear, heart beating louder than my footsteps and sweat dropping down my brow. We both make it into the back room and slam the door, with the lock mechanism locking into place and indicating that we were safe. At least I was hoping so. Josh then begins to pound on the door while I'm just standing there trying to hold back tears, traumatized. Colton tells Josh that we were calling the police, but I don't really think he actually cared about that. He kept kicking and kicking at the door, demanding I come out and talk to him, and that nothing bad would happen to me if I listened to him. Obviously, that was not going to be happening, and thankfully the police get there just as Josh is leaving, and they manage to arrest him with no further altercation. And needless to say, I was actually left traumatized for a while and had to attend therapy just to get over the incident. I mean, imagine some creepy guy just coming after you when you're just trying to do your damn job. Ugh, sucks. Anyway, luckily I never did see Josh again after that. And after said therapy, I would eventually be able to move on with my life and start a family with my loving husband. This happened many years ago when I used to work for Blockbuster in Oregon. It had been an extra cold and rainy evening that day, and I had been pretty bored, seeing as the last customer I'd assisted was over an hour ago. That was fine since I was just watching some of the movies we had on the TVs. A few customers came and went, and when it was time to close up, I let out a sigh of relief knowing I could finally go home and I could step into the bath and let the worries of that shift drift away. I locked up the front door, as per usual, and then I began to make my way to the back room so that I could grab my rain jacket. However, before I had a chance to get in there, I saw a movement through the small glass window installed into the back door. I stood there pondering for a brief moment. The only people allowed in the back room were employees, and I was closing by myself. Also, I'm pretty sure if one of my coworkers had shown up, they would have let me know they were there. Well, instantly I assumed it might have been a customer who was still in here, possibly looking for the restroom. I know, it's a strange assumption, but what can I say to all of you? I walk in, and I immediately announce, "Hey, sorry, but employees only. You can't be back here." I heard movement at one of the back corners, and I froze because I could see somebody in a black hoodie trying to hide from me. I instantly remembered a pretty shady character who was in here about 30 minutes before closing with a similar black hoodie, but I had lost sight of him, which is why I assumed, yet again, he'd already left, and had not seen him do so. So many assumptions, I know. After not hearing anything, I once again announced that he's gotta go, and like anyone else, I just want to go home. Well, I'm starting to get quite paranoid, which is why I make the announcement I would be calling the police. That seemed to have done the trick. From the back corner, where the light could barely touch, walks out a large man who's got a firm grasp of a gun. I pretty much noped my way out of this storm and Superman dive into my driver's seat. Meanwhile, I watched the man running off with some movies. I called the police, and they said they would look into it. But unfortunately, to this day, as far as I know, the man was never found. I'm still not sure what movies he took, but I guess at that point it doesn't really matter. Safe to say, I actually quit a couple of months later, and I started working at an organic supermarket, where I'm still at today, and I'm currently a manager. So that was the last story for today's episode. If this was the first time you joined us, then do consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you'll be notified of all the future uploads coming here to the channel. Also, make sure to leave a like rating if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment telling me what you all thought. Also, if you yourself have a scary story that you'd like to share, then send it in with my user submissions email, which appears on screen on my videos, TCFNarrations@gmail.com. Now, if you're looking for more of the Creepy Fox, then check out all the other videos I got on my channel. There's so much narration content that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. I've also got some exclusive Scary Stories narration episodes. If you'd like to listen to those, then for as little as $2 a month, you can become a Creepy Fox channel member and gain access to 10+ hours of extra additional content. I also got some cool merch which is featured down below. There's shirts, stickers, sweaters, coffee mugs, you name it. I got a lot of things that you might like, so check it out, see if you might find something on the Creepy Fox shop. Anyway, that is gonna go ahead and do it for today. Thank you so much everyone for watching today, and I'll go ahead and catch you all on the next episode. Until then, take care and have yourself an amazing day.